All right, we are here today at the Red Lotus interviewing Susie Hughes, who's running for County Commission District 3 in Muskegon County, which primarily encompasses Muskegon Township, but I think there's some other municipalities included.
There was previously, but now there's not. It will be the entire township of Muskegon.
Okay, so just Muskegon Township.
Just Muskegon Township.
All right. Tell us about yourself, your background, why you're running for County Commissioner.
Lived in Muskegon all my life. Moved into Muskegon Township 36 years ago when I got married. Grew up in Fruitport, graduated from school at Fruitport. I married a guy that came from Muskegon Township and moved into the township. Several years ago, 4 years ago, he was elected to the township board. And I said, "You're on your own. I don't want anything to do with it." But they did something that I didn't like. So I showed up at the meeting and kind of got interested, started following the township, and it seems like the township is doing fairly well. I mean, they've cut their budget down and they've actually got more money than they did 4 years ago. And our county commissioner was never at any of the meetings. But I went to the county meetings too, and actually did that before I got upset with the township. And I noticed that, seems to me, the Muskegon County Commissioner that I'm running against now voted more for the cities than he did for the township. It seemed like we were just kind of left out in the cold. But in all fairness, Muskegon Township was represented by 3 different county commissioners. One on the north side, one on the east side where I was Commissioner Derazinski, who was from Eggleston. And on the north side it was Mr. Snyder, who was from City of North Muskegon. And in the middle was Scott Plummer, who represented the middle of Muskegon Township and quite a part, almost exactly the same precincts in City of Muskegon. So we weren't very well represented as a township because people were from so many other areas. A little more about me. Married, no kids, dogs, lots of them. I've been involved in the community in a lot of different ways. I'm very active with an organization called Safari Club International. I've sat on the international board for 11 years. I've been on their conservation committee and their humanitarian services committee. They're in several of those committees on the international board. Plus at the local level, I was the first chapter president of Safari Club in Michigan. And now we have a local chapter here in Muskegon called Lakeshore Sportsman. And I'm very active with conservation and education too in that area. And I am on 2 different township boards. I actually serve on the Fruitport Township Brownfield Authority, and I serve on the Muskegon Township Parks and Recreation Committee.
How are you going to be different than Scott Plummer?
Well, first of all, I'm going to work really hard for my township to see that my township is represented as well as any of the other parts of the county. And I noticed, and that's a challenge on its own, because Muskegon Township is doing well financially. And when you're doing well financially, you don't qualify for some of the same grants and obligations that some of the others qualify for. So that just means I have to work harder. And I have seen some of the other commissioners work extremely hard for their communities, almost to the point of not looking out for the best interest of the county. They are so township or community minded, which I think you have to be community minded of the community you represent, but the county as a whole is really your job too.
So you're looking at this from a standpoint of, okay, I'm going to represent my township, but I'm going to do it in light of how does my township relate to the county?
How does my township fit into the whole scheme of the county? Yes.
New jail, that's been talked about quite a bit, and that's going to be a major expenditure.
Oh, yes, it is. In my opinion, no, for a couple of reasons. One, I believe that the majority of the problems that exist in the jail right now are problems that were created by the current county board in their neglect of taking care of the jail, upkeeping the jail, and I think giving them a new jail is just reward for that neglect. And I think the same thing is happening at Brookhaven, and Brookhaven will be in my municipality. And I certainly don't want that to continue in my area.
What's the problem with Brookhaven?
Right now, Brookhaven, for the last 26 years, has failed miserably almost all of their inspections in the state level. I mean, as far as patient to nurse time care, their safety, fire, building codes, everything. And I actually called the state and asked them, why don't you shut it down? And they had an excellent answer. What are we going to do with all the people? I didn't think about that. What are they gonna do with old people? But if you are neglecting I believe that with the jail, I believe they wanted a new jail so bad that they intentionally neglected that jail. And right now, I will have to honestly say, I don't know if the jail we have now is capable of being renovated to be a proper jail. I don't know that. And in that situation, if we do have to have a new jail, we don't have to have a monument jail. We can have a functional jail, and I certainly don't want to put the criminals that need to be in a jail over and above the welfare of our elderly at Brookhaven. And I think that's an option that has been just completely ignored by the people in the county board.
You're aware of approximately, say, 10 to 12 years ago, the jail had a capacity of roughly 250, and it's been expanded in the basement of the county building,
Yes.
so now it's about 400. Is that adequate?
I actually think that it's more than adequate. I think there's people in jail that probably could have not been in jail. And I have heard tales that some people end up in jail over the weekend just so that their count is up on Monday morning, and that some people are picked up with, now I've only heard this, but I've heard that some people are picked up after 4:30 for outstanding warrants, and they could be parking tickets or anything. Since there's no judge available for them, they spend the whole weekend in jail, and that ups the count. Well, if that's true, and I actually have no way of finding that out because nobody wants to admit to anything like that, then I definitely think that we need to reevaluate the whole situation with the jail before we even talk about a new one.
So then you think the county is playing political shenanigans
Yes, I
with
do.
the jail, and they're basically they're giving the bums rush to Brookhaven and not paying any attention to that at all?
That's exactly what I think. And I think until Brookhaven got a new administrator in December of this year, and he started going through the books, I think the $2 million they gave him would have remained buried. And the only reason it came out now was because they want to finance the jail without having to go to the people. They wanted to get a bond so that they could do that without having to talk to the people first. That's how they had to give that money back, because we wouldn't pass the financial things so that we could do that.
So you're looking at the county board and you're saying you guys have really been irresponsible as managers, as
I believe
stewards of
that.
our money,
Yes, I do
and
believe
that
that.
sort of thing.
Yes, I do. And I think part of that is because the lack of transparency at the county level, and that transparency makes it so that we, as citizens, are ignorant of what's going on. We've been kept in the dark. We don't know what's going on. We have no way to fight back because we don't know it exists.
So not only is the problem there, it's been hidden from us, so it takes quite a bit of detective work to find it.
A lot of work. I spend a lot of work researching things from the county that I know that the county commissioners do not know as much as I do about it. They don't ask any questions about it, but they vote.
So essentially, you're saying there are a bunch of figureheads that go along with some of the people in the background that are pulling their strings.
Oh, yes, I believe that.
Okay, well, let's go into some of the
Okay.
issues that are currently with the county commission.
Okay?
What is your opinion on our current bid process for jobs?
I think it sucks. For one thing, they are very reluctant and don't get competitive bids if they can get away without it. And they have also changed the way they put out bids. It used to be on the purchasing website, all the bids for anything that was going out, and they did not put a lot out to bids, but anything that was going out was on the purchasing website. Well, people started looking at it and looking at it and looking at it, and they said, oh gosh, we don't want that. Now, I shouldn't say that. For some reason, they decided to take it off of the Muskegon County purchasing website and put it on a state website that is very difficult for the residents to access. And it goes out that way. And then when you come back and go into the purchasing website and go to bid tabulations, which will tell you what the bids came back as, that's not available on the county website either. You have to go back into the state website to be able to access that information. And for an example, right now, today, they're going to vote on an over $300,000 retrofit for the sprinkling system at Brookhaven. It's over $300,000. They voted in the committee to approve the high bid that's over $30,000 more than the low bid, and none of them are from Muskegon. And they got 2 bids on a $300,000 project. And that's just, I'm actually, my husband is in the construction business, and I can tell you on a project that size, 2 bids is just absolutely unheard of.
So you're saying that what they're essentially doing then is they're not putting the bid process out on an open and obvious basis where it's easy for a contractor to see that there's bids required for something, so you can get more than 2 bids on a project.
You cannot get them from the Muskegon County site. For a bid coming out of Muskegon County, that information is not available on the Muskegon County site. You have to go off-site into another site, you have to register and get all the information, and you actually, if you're going to bid, you actually have to go in and register, and I think you might even have to pay a fee. It was so much work, I finally said, all right, I'm gonna go back and do this later. But I can get into the bid tabulations without that, but not into the bidding process itself.
So they're making it harder to bid, so.
Without a doubt.
So essentially what you have then is, well, the bigger companies who have the manpower to take the time and do the paperwork and do what they have to do to get on to
Right.
fill this, they're gonna be the ones that are actually gonna get
And
to bid.
And it actually eliminates a lot of our local contractors.
Exactly.
Well, not only contractors, a lot of our local vendors.
Right, exactly.
And I also have found that the bills are being paid without bids. And that's a thing that's extremely overlooked. Like the insurance bill comes in, and instead of saying, let's get bids on our insurance for this year, when the bill comes in for the insurance for 2012, they just pay it. They pay as invoiced instead of actually getting a bid. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So you would be willing to, you would say, okay, look, we have to go ahead and every year, when our certain bills come due, we want to go ahead and get bids from various insurance agencies, banks, whoever our vendors
In
are.
Muskegon Township, they saved $130,000 over a 4-year term by just bidding their insurance. But they had just paid the bill when it came, paid it. And actually, sadly to say, we have the same insurance carrier, but we've saved $130,000 by competitively bidding that out and making him lower his price or not get the bid.
That's a good strategy.
So,
All right, what is your opinion on bidding preferences?
well, I have a double-edged sword there. I certainly think that the bidder ought to be a qualified bidder. I think you should have all of the proof of insurance required for that. I think he should be licensed to do what he's supposed to do, and I think he should have reliable references. But when you get a bid and you have approved the bidder, that bidder should be approved. If his bid is low, he should get it. And I saw the county board take a bid the other day for an approved bidder. They took the high bid because the low bid did not have as much experience. Well, she's still qualified, and she was local and the other one was out of town. And they did not give it to her because she didn't have as much experience. But she met all the qualifications of the pre-bid process, and they still gave it to somebody else.
Isn't experience subjective, though?
I think so.
What you might think is experienced, I don't, but
That's
if they
true.
meet the qualifications.
You might have it, you personally might have a lot of experience, but as a new business, your business might not. I think that is subjective, but once she qualified to bid for that, I think she should have had the same opportunity, and because she was a low bid, I think she should have got it. Now, in the pre-bid process, when they qualified the bidders, I think if she had not been, they wouldn't have even accepted a bid.
Exactly. She was
And
local besides.
She was local besides. But I don't have a problem with them making sure that the contractors or vendors that they're going to use are qualified for that job. I really think that's an important thing.
Okay, how about a preference of local versus out of city, out of state,
That's
out of
tough.
county?
I would like to see as much local as possible, and I realize that's not always possible. But when there are local vendors possible, and let's face it, most of the county stuff is not something that is time sensitive. And you have the opportunity to say, this is what our budget is. Our budget is $300,000. Put it out to local bids. If nobody makes that, then go otherwise. But if you got a local bidder that comes within your budget, I don't see the need to go outside.
Do you think the county has neglected basic services and focused on frills that are
Yes, I do.
things that government normally doesn't do?
Yes. That there's a lot of things that I think that about. For one thing, I think that they have done a lot of things like, for example, I have trouble with the houses, the Hackley House, the Skolnick House, the things like that. There's a lot of things that I think that should be run through the community foundation rather than be part of our taxes. I don't think that that should be a part of our taxes, but I think that the MATS system should be able to get the people where they want to go. And right now, it's 100 degrees out there, and you drive by the MATS buses, and there's people sitting on the ground, laying on the ground, sitting on the sidewalk, standing on the sidewalk. There's no benches, there's no shelters, there's no nothing. And I think those are, if that's the way you want to go with the MATS system, then at least that's a service you provide to the community. That's a service you provide to the constituents. I don't think the Skolnick House, the Hackley House, and things like that are.
So you're taking a look, do you think we need expanded bus system around here?
The bus system is kind of touchy with me. I think it's a little bit discriminatory. I think the cities have great bus systems. I think the rural communities do not. But since that's a mandated thing through the federal government to a certain extent, I think that we need to make it more user-friendly. And I think we spend way too much money on huge buses that are never full when we could get it by with a lot smaller buses. And I think our routes need drastic look at them. And I also think that some of the money that we get every year, which is almost $300,000 for Clean Air Action Days, should give people free rides on the buses. Because we've got a lot of people who don't have access to air conditioning. It's 100 degrees out there. At least let them ride the bus for an hour before bedtime. Give them a way to go to the beach. I mean, let the people see that their tax dollars are working for them. And I think that's the way to do it.
So what I'm hearing from you then is that you think the county is not constituent user-friendly. It's
I
something
believe
that,
that, yes.
You think it's basically a bureaucracy, a non-responsive bureaucracy? Is that a fair
Yes,
statement?
it is. And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead with your questions.
We tag back and forth.
Okay.
I kick in when I feel
One thing
he's
that
off track.
I think is extremely important is consolidation. And the county asks all of the municipalities to consolidate and do things together, but the county doesn't do anything with them. It stands up there and tells us all what to do, but it doesn't partner with us in consolidation. Not only that, it doesn't partner with itself. Why don't the people from the purchasing and the clerk's office and everybody get together and order paper? I mean, this is a little thing, but every department orders its own paper. You know you're going to use paper. It's not going to go bad. Let's get together and order the paper. In Muskegon Township, we got together with Holton, with Eggleston, Muskegon Township, and Fruitport Township, I believe, and we bought hose. The more you bought, the cheaper it got by foot, and the more you bought, no shipping on that heavy hose for the fire department. And we got it the whole bunch of it was cheaper than we had in our budget for the hose just from Muskegon Township. Everybody saved tons of money. Why don't we do that countywide?
That's what I was, we could do something like that on a
we could do
basis
lots
that-
of stuff like that.
So we're not
But
consolidating.
I have a question that I need to point out on this one. Now, is that consolidation or is that cooperation?
That's a good question. I guess that would be cooperation. But consolidation, I can tell you that, and I have to go back to Muskegon Township because that's where I would be representing and where I'm most familiar. In Muskegon Township, I would say consolidation, we consolidated. And I think a good thing is our chief of fire, our fire chief, is very, very fluent in the 911 system. And he has gone into all the other municipalities and helped train. The other municipalities have put money in a pot so that now they're changing their system with 911. He's going to be the one that goes to the class, and then he'll come back and teach all the other ones too. So I think that is cooperation and collaboration.
So essentially, when people think consolidation, they think, okay, I'm going to lose my identity here, I'm going to lose my police department, my fire department, my town council, whatever, and we're going to have one big town council, one big fire department, one big police department. But if you just cooperate a lot more, you still have your basic identities, but everything you're doing is done a lot more economical, and there's a lot more interaction between the municipalities.
And this is, do I have a second to do?
Yeah.
Okay, off subject, kind of on subject. I went by in the fall, windy, and all the leaves are down, on the corner of Black Creek and Old Tough, right there at Reed Tool. And there was a fire in the parking lot, in the leaves. And I quick dialed 911 and I said, the quickest fire department, I grew up right there, the quickest fire department is a minute away. It's on Black Creek Road, right down there at Fruitport. And 15 minutes later, I stayed, and some guys were working on the bike trail. And they came over with bottles of water and stuff, and with rakes, because they had rakes, and they got it out. And 15 minutes later, here comes the guys from City of Muskegon. So later on that week, I had a meeting with the guys from Fruitport, and Fruitport said they can't respond to a fire because the City of Muskegon doesn't want them there. They were 5 times as close. They were honestly within a mile and a half, and they came from downtown. And it's 15 minutes. I know those guys could have been there in 2 minutes. They're not a mile and a half away. And that's not cooperation.
So essentially, okay, tell me how I agree with you on that. How does the county go ahead and come in and say to these municipalities, look, use some common sense and cooperate here. You're not going to lose your identity by doing it, but you're doing all government, I don't care if it's county, state, whatever, local, is supposed to be here to serve the people the most convenient, economic, efficient way to do it. How does the county force these municipalities to do that?
I don't think force is the right word. I think encourage is the right word. And I can tell you how. We have committee meetings all the time. The county board has committee meetings. They're a committee of the 11 people that decide at the committee to do something, and then at the county board meeting, those 11 people do it. There is nobody from there. Why not have a committee that includes the municipality fire departments? Let them all work together on projects together. Have a committee of the county fire boards so that they can all work together. Sit down and say, hey, we got this problem, what about you? Well, we've solved it this way. I mean, if they were included in some of those committee meetings and could give input and receive input, that would be the first step. I think our county committees need to involve the people that the committee is about, not just the 11 county commissioners.
Okay. Going back a little bit, we were talking about the buses. That deals a lot with grants.
Yes, it is.
What is your opinion on grants and how they should be used?
Well, one thing the county commission seems to forget is that every time they say, with no effect on the general fund, and accept a grant, it might be no expense to the general fund, but it's expense to you and me and everybody else, because they didn't reach up and grab that money. They took it out of your taxes when you paid it. And whether it came from your state taxes, your local taxes, your property taxes, it's coming from taxes somewhere. That's the only way they get money. And I think we need to evaluate first whether that's a needed grant. Do we actually need that project? And second, have we done it before and how did it go? And are you competing with a local business or a local municipality to do it? I think all those things should be brought into before anything. And I think you should, before any grant is renewed or applied for again, the county board should be able to look at what happened with the last grant and how successful or how expensive it was. And if in fact it did have no effect on general fund. And it's funny to me that a lot of these things are put through with no effect on general fund, and a lot of times the people are hired with no effect on general funds, and that program lasts a year, but I never see them come back and we want to renew this program. Does that just get sucked up into the system and make it more top-heavy?
Apparently so, because the government has a problem with doing things as the private sector does, and government seems to think that it has an endless supply of funds and can do whatever it
Well,
wants to do.
today they want to make it so that the health department can give flu shots for $25. But what about all of the Walgreens pharmacies and all the pharmacies around that give shots for $31? You're cutting right into them. I mean, is a unthought of consequence that people will lose their jobs over this?
Well, do you think that the county has a tendency to do things that it doesn't need to do while neglecting basic services?
Yes.
And if the county would just stay focused on basic services, we'd all be better off?
I think the government should be designed to do the things for people that people cannot do for themselves. And there was a time that we could sit on our porch with a shotgun across our laps and defend our property. We can't do that anymore. There was a time when the road was bad, you got your bed spring out there and you drug it till it was good. We can't do that anymore. Those are services that we expect our tax money to cover, not frills and things that don't have anything to do with that, with our quality of life. And our quality of life millage is the art museum and the Skolnick House and the Hackley House and all those things, which are wonderful things, but they don't affect my quality of life.
So you think basically the government needs to stick to the basic things that the people can't do for themselves, and all these other, I'll say, projects, the frosting on the cake needs to be paid through the foundation, private
Yes.
sector, donations,
And I
things
think
like
the
that.
people should have a voice in a majority vote on which services they think benefit us the best. And if times are tight and some things have got to go, then I think it should be to the taxpayers to say, okay, we know times are tight. These are the things we really can't do without.
If the county board keeps pushing this new jail and you're elected, would you push to have it placed on the ballot if the people could vote on it?
Yes, I would. I think you're spending the people's money. The people should have the right to vote.
Would you institute a policy that for certain large expenditures, they'd be required to be placed on the ballot before their money's spent?
I think that's a real smart idea. I would support that, yes.
Okay, speaking of mandated and services, you had mentioned about our roads. What do you think can and should be done with our county road commission?
County Road Commission's a double-edged sword. They, especially this year, because the opportunity to dissolve the road commission exists. And the road commission has a lot of money this year because they didn't spend a whole lot of money plowing. So it is going to be kind of a hot topic there. The road commission has been sort of a renegade for the last few years. And it has been in control of which roads are done without any input from the people. And while I don't live on Getty Street, when you can barely drive down it, that should have been a priority. Now, they're fixing it now because it was, the asphalt had turned to gravel. And there's, sometimes, and I know there are budget constraints, but the municipalities should have a way to communicate with the road commission or the county commission and say, these are our top priorities for our road. They don't ever listen to any of that.
If the road commission is dissolved, wouldn't that just go ahead and give the county a windfall to go ahead and spend however they want?
No, because those funds have to go to the roads. What they do is they get the portion, they get the road tax and the gas tax out there. And those funds are set aside for that. They can't be used for something else. But it might give the people a better chance to decide which roads need to be repaired. You're never going to get Muskegon to thrive again if you can't bring business in here that will hire people. And you can't. And when you drive into town and you hit the road that you've got all the way down through there, that's not a very good indication of how user-friendly the county is.
Well, my question.
Is, would I dissolve the road commission?
Well, no, actually, that you're kind of getting into, but you use a specific example of Getty.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not exactly sure where the borders are of Muskegon Heights.
That's actually, where it was so bad was actually city of Norton Shores. I'm talking from Sherman to Seaway Drive.
Okay, but isn't that covered under the city's public works rather than the county?
Actually, I
road
don't believe the city of Norton Shores does any road work themselves. They maintain some of the roads, but they don't repave them. The county commission is doing that, or the road commission is doing that.
commission? Okay.
Would I dissolve the road commission? I'm actually not prepared to say what ramifications there would be to that right now. I would have to know a lot more, and I would have to know a lot more than some of those people would be willing to vote for or against it right now.
In other words, this is one of these situations where they're not telling the people, even their own elected officials, what exactly the ramifications are. It's something you've got to go search for. And
The
hunt
road
down.
commission is pretty much an entity of its own. They have their own budget, they have their own money, it goes right to them, it does not come from the county. So they hold themselves above everybody else. But the county does have a lot of authority there because they do appoint the road commissioners. The head of the road commission is hired by the county and all of the road commissioners are appointed.
Okay. Talk about effectiveness road commission grants. My final question, which you've kind of touched on a little bit, what is your view of the size of government?
Well, I think our government is way too big. I think it has way too much control of money that they believe we're not capable of spending. And I believe we are as capable as they are of spending the money on our behalf. But I also realize that there are things that we cannot do for ourselves. But our county has done things that have cost us a lot more than was ever intended by us or even them. Because sometimes you'll take something that's not mandated for us to do. If we make the decision to do that, once we have done it, the way we do it becomes mandated. So we're required, for example, to have a sheriff's department, but their only job that's mandated is to take care of the courts and the jail. A road patrol is not mandated. But when we decide to do a road patrol, there are mandates within that frame that we have to adhere to. And sometimes we didn't know how much those mandates would cost us to have. And that happens daily with some of the programs that we accept grants for. It was not a mandated program and still is not, but within the framework of the grant, there are so many mandated things that we did not fully research that it ends up costing us a lot of money.
In other words, there's a bunch of hooks that come with it. We didn't
Yes.
know about it when we got the grant. The grant
That's
looked
right.
good, it's free money, let's take it. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, look what came with it.
I attended the meeting where the accounting firm that did the audit presented the audit. And one thing he did say on the county level is, you are very top heavy with grants, although you're pretty good at jumping through the hoops. And that's almost exactly word for word what he said. Because there are a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through when you take all those grants, especially the huge grants that we take sometimes. We've taken a grant for the last 3 years, it's $80,000. It trains 10 people to become lead certified apprentice. But there are no jobs out there for those people. And the first time, not everybody graduated, nobody got a job. So we spent the next $80,000 the following year, and one more graduated, so I think there was 7 that graduated, and none of them got a job. Now we just did it again. So for 3 years, now we got 30 people out there trained, or we should have had 30 people trained, not all of them finished, but none of them have got a job in that field. The jobs aren't there. And the problem is, we don't ever ask anybody from the field that, what do we need? What kind of jobs do you need? We trained people for jobs that we don't have.
That would indicate to me that somebody isn't doing their job in the county. They got a grant to train somebody for a job that's really non-existent. Why didn't they go ahead and do that?
And actually,
homework?
one of the county commissioners, when they were voting on it, Mr. Longmire said, you know, there's guys sitting at the union halls right now, a whole slew of them, with those same qualifications and experience. These guys are never going to work. All you're going to do is build up their hopes and dash them to the ground when they find out they've gone through all of this and they still can't get a job.
So we had one county commissioner that did the right thing and
Well,
spoke up.
there was two.
Two, okay.
Right, Mr. Jagger, and I guess I would have to say Anthony Longmire was a surprise to have spoken up, because Mr. Jagger seems to ask a lot of questions and nobody else does. But in this point, in this particular one, Mr. Longmire stood up and said, it's not gonna work. But they were all outvoted.
So I'm getting from you essentially that you think these guys are out of touch, and not just one of them, but more than one of them.
Well, I look at the board and I see a lot of 10-year veterans there, and they made policies, because basically the county board is a policy-making board.
Right.
And 10 years ago, they got in and made all these wonderful policies, and then our economy came tumbling down around them. But do they want to change those policies? No, they're their policies. And I don't think they're willing or able to look past the wonderful policy that they set when they first got on board to what really needs to be done now. And times have changed dramatically, and some new policies and some renovation of old ones are in desperate need at the county level.
Would you do anything different as far as the budgeting the county departments is concerned? What would, if you had to take a look at it, would there be a priority list where it's like, these are the ones that we're gonna make sure get fully funded, these are the ones that, if the funds are available, fine, and these are the ones that's like, what are we funding this for to begin with?
Ideally, the head of every department should have to present, first of all, a description of what that department does and what the priorities in that department are and what it takes to do it. And then you would be able to look at it intelligently and see what it does. What does a GIS department do? Never heard of it, did you?
It's got something to do with mapping, I believe.
Mapping.
Okay.
I can tell you a lot actually about
But-
that,
but
because it's
the-
one of the topics I like, but
But the GIS, we did not actually get a mountain in the last few years.
Right,
We didn't get a new river.
right,
You know, I mean, we're kind of the same thing we were a long time ago.
right.
So,
well, the GIS actually does the converting everything over to electronic format so that it's easier accessible and replicatable.
I think what it does is it saves people the trip of going to the county building or the
That's
association office.
But regardless, it's something that
but I'm just saying.
they should
that's-
present and say why
And
they
I
are
would like to
needed.
see all of the county departments. First of all, as a brand new commissioner, I would think that the whole board, every time they changed, it's only every 2 years. The department heads should have to come and meet the board, tell them what they do and why their department is such an integral part of the county that it should be fully funded. I mean, otherwise, how do we know? I mean, I think that should be mandatory, that you prepared to defend your department and explain it every 2 years.
That makes sense. What, the circuit court records office used to have 2 terminals that the public could come in and look up any case, whether any case in the county they wanted to find information on. Those have been taken out of the office. Now, I don't know to what degree the county commission can have, I don't know to what degree the county commission can have the circuit court put those back in, but would you be in favor of that?
Yes, certainly. Actually, I don't see why that couldn't be available online.
See, that's what I think too, but it's something that if it is available online for a fee.
It is available. See, now something that I don't think that should be, I would think that should be free. I would think that should be part of transparency in our system. Now, it's possible that I would want there to be some controls over if it was a juvenile case or a sex offense case, so that that information was not readily available to the public. I don't think that should be available without going in and filing a reasonable explanation of why you want that. But for regular cases, I think that should be available online. I don't know why it's not. I know that right now there is some confusion because they're remodeling the courthouse, and I know the clerk's office is over in the Baker College. So I know that that makes difficulty because the clerk's office is the one who handles the records from the courts.
Right.
So I know there is kind of a conflict of trying to get all of that in one central location and available. And whether that has anything to do with it or not, I don't know. But I do think that any information that is available as public knowledge should be available. And if you can't get it online, then you should have a place that you can go and get it.
Some counties and municipalities have the tendency to charge for these things, that if you went into their office, you just ask for it and they would go ahead and give it to you or
Right.
point it out to you. But when it's online, they seem to think they can charge what's called a convenience fee or a user fee. Would you eliminate those?
Oh, yes. Certainly, there's no cost to the county to put it online. You've already got it on the computer to be able to print it off. You just pop it online. I mean, it seems like that would be an easy thing to do. And something that would certainly benefit the community to be able to have that information. That should also be really available at our district libraries. You should be able to access from a library to their county libraries. You should be able to, they all have computers, that should be available there too.
Think the county library system is adequate?
In some areas, yes, in some areas, no. In our smaller municipalities, sometimes those libraries get a tremendous amount of use, especially in areas that do not have a lot of access for high-speed internet. The library is the only access available, especially for students, because a lot of your stuff is done online anymore. And if it's not available in your home, you need to have a place to go. On the other hand, a lot of things are now available online, and there are not as many printed books as there were at one time. But a lot of audio information is available in the library too. I love to read. I'm a big fan of the library. I would hate to see it go. I think that's something that, and especially if you ever go to a Norton Shores Township meeting, it's at the library. And if you just go walk through the library, it's full of people, from kids to senior citizens. It's really used. Maybe we don't promote it like we should, but I would hate to see the library go, yes.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm glad to see the two groups work together so well.